Linwood Jackson Jr. is an author writing on mental and spiritual health and on its life-altering benefit. Is someone who believes in the power of the Bible's word when sincerely exercised and studied. Through his books, Species, and Discourse, he encourages to think and feel for self, that self-love may bloom into self-possession to the knowledge acquired from experience. This, it says, betters the personal and devotional life, not only for the person, but also for all around them. And on today's episode of our interview, it's my utmost pleasure and joy to have on the show today Linwood Jackson. Welcome on the show, Linwood.
Thank you. I'm psyched and hyped to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's my utmost pleasure to have you on the show today. I'm excited as well. So, Linwood, could you tell us about your book, A Faith That Works? And I want to say that's such an amazing title. Now, how does this book come about? What inspired you to write A Faith That Works?
Well, I published my first book, 2017, and the message that I thought would be put out there actually wasn't. So
Oh,
I was more concerned with people hearing about the need to take into accountability personal wisdom and exercising self and letting self go through an experience that is philosophical and spiritual to
mm,
cleanse or to purify, I guess, the way that we see life and the way that we see how we carry ourselves. So that's the message I wanted to put out there. But what actually came back was when I told my story of how I began writing this book, people started reaching out to me, um, actually joining into the discussion about the things that they are going through also.
oh,
They're going through personal struggles, and it's been challenging their religious beliefs. It's been challenging their belief of what it means to be a human, what it means to be just to be. I'll just say quote unquote to be, what it means to be.
mm,
And the more that I kept talking to individuals, the more that I saw that they were having an experience that was forcing them to be something that they weren't, when
wow,
they knew they should be having a sort of philosophical or mental experience aside from that. So that's where this title of Faith That Works comes from, is the individuals talking to me felt like they had to work for their belief. Like they felt like they had
wow,
to work to make their belief real to them.
wow.
And so this book is called A Faith That Works because it's talking about how we need to have a belief system that is concrete to who we are individually that works for us.
That's great. That's really amazing. And I love the sound of it. Now, I also see that you have another book titled A Falling Record, The Christian Transgression. For readers
Yes.
who haven't read that yet, and of course, without giving much information away, could we have a sneak of what I'd expect picking up A Falling Record?
Yeah, so I have it right here. And
Beautiful cover.
you can
Yeah.
see from the title, I've got an open book, there's ink on it, pages
Oh,
ripped up. Um,
wow. That's
the
an
main
amazing
thing
illustration.
it's that's the theme is I've always been interested in how the Christian church began, and not from the sort of flowery type literature that you get when you're reading published Christian literature. I wanted the real thing.
Mm,
It's really difficult to get a real history because it's so conflated with beliefs that are filled with propaganda to promote the religion.
mm.
So I wanted a concrete type of history. I never got that. So I set out to do it myself. And that's
Wow.
what this book is. This book is a history of how the Christian church began and how it actually fell away from the actual philosophy that it began with, and also that is from within the scriptures. So the main title, I'm sorry, the image I have just to perfectly illustrated is a table with an open book on it. Ink is
Mm,
blotting out the page, the words of the pages. The pages are ripped up. There is a rope, a noose
yeah.
right there. It's just the true history of the Christian organization. It goes away from the actual philosophy that's within the Bible, and this book takes you through a historical journey using only the sources from within the scriptures to paint the picture, to bring the person back in time, to see not just where the falling off went, but
Wow.
to see where they individually, where they match up with that, to know where they should be and where they, what they need to let go of.
Wow. I would love to say that you have such an interesting theme, title, and subject, to expound in your books. It actually is something very important, and I love the sound of it. Very
It's true.
intriguing.
It's true.
Now, I'm also curious to know if you experienced any challenges in the process of writing your books. If there is any, could you share with us what challenge it is and how you ultimately overcame it?
Of course. Oh man, where do I begin? Challenges because my viewpoint, I'm writing something that people associate with theology. So
Yeah.
I'm writing about the Bible,
Mm,
but the individuals that are reading it, it's really difficult to separate the Bible from theology and to separate the Bible from Christianity.
absolutely.
And that's my main work and my main focus is to show that the Bible's philosophy, it has nothing sincerely to do with Judaism, nothing sincerely to do with Christianity. It's really amazing. And
Wow.
it's so amazing that there's conflict because
Wow.
I'm in the world of religious philosophy and theology, and the challenges are they are so not wanting to understand because that word theology, when
Mm,
you break it down, theo means God. Theo is the Greek word for God.
yeah.
Theo or th, that means God, and ology means knowledge. So
Wow.
when you jump into theology, you should be expecting people willing
To
to
criticize.
not to knowledgeably talk about what they are calling theos. Now,
Mm,
theos is the general deity of what we would call God, and it's the knowledge of theos. But theology doesn't really care about what is in the Bible. Theology only
wow.
cares about what is the ology or the science of theos. So when I'm writing, when I'm speaking, the conflict from is it experts or scholars or the publishing world or religious journals,
Wow.
the conflict is that my interest and their interest they're not aligning because while my main focus is to get the Bible's philosophy out there,
Wow.
their main focus is to continue the science of theo.
Mm,
And while the mainstream sector of that has been a challenge, surprisingly, the individuals that have been listening, that are tuned into the experts, the individuals that are tuned into the world of theology, they're appreciating my work. They're
wow.
appreciating the books. They're appreciating the way that I can put philosophy of the Bible into poetry. My book of poetry called Growth.
Mm,
That is a book of poetry based on the Bible's philosophy. So everything is about philosophy catered to what is within, as opposed to what is outside in the religious world, which is about theology. So the challenge is a challenge of that's it's a doctrinal challenge. There's been times where I've gotten hate,
mm.
and still, but that just lets you know that you're doing something right. If you get too much love, you need to just check yourself and you're not doing something right. You're getting too much love. If you get in an equal balance, you should be hated by the people that are not doing the right sort of marketing and that are just propagandizing off of um, a cult thought anciently.
Yeah.
You should feel challenged from them. You shouldn't feel challenged from the individuals that tell you that they're hurt from these things and that they need more awareness is what they're telling me. And so that's my main thing of who I
Wow.
want to affect, although I like to affect both realms.
Wow, I love your illustration of this particular subject line and your division and divination of theo and logi and the way that it really makes for an interesting discussion. I really love it. And for the fact, knowing that all this can contain through poetry as well, is something that is
Mm,
very intriguing to know. It really intrigues me. I love the sound of it. Thank you so much for sharing.
no,
Now, I
thank
also
you.
love to say that I particularly admire the description of Azazel. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that
Oh,
correctly. The
yep, yep.
search for life after death on Amazon. And I must say that that's such a captivating title for a book. Now, would you love to tell us a bit about that too?
Yeah, I that's my first fantasy fiction novel, I
Wow.
guess, that I wrote independently. I began writing that book in 2011, actually.
Wow.
And while I was writing that book, I was actually with a writing company at that same time. So writing books for them. And my experiences, that experience, and then at that time I was also an undergraduate. And so the book Azazel, it's a search for life after death because my experience at that time was I didn't feel catered to in my educational experience.
Hmm.
I was going through an educational experience that I felt wasn't going to do anything for me. While society told me that it would, parents told me that it would, um, but the expectation didn't turn out to be anything of that. It was the complete opposite. Society didn't
Wow.
work for me, and when society didn't work for me, and I wasn't where I was supposed to be in the eyes of family or parents, parents didn't work for me. So it was one of those things where you had to figure out the lies that you have been told, the sheepish
Hmm.
mentality that I had,
Wow.
to sit down, and the only way that I knew how to do that was writing.
Wow.
And so I creatively placed my life situation and its complexity into a fantasy fiction novel, which is
Wow.
which is something I believe all writers should do. So I believe when it comes to fantasy fiction, when it comes to fiction, it's not an escape from reality, it's a plunge into it. So when
Wow.
it comes to fiction, it should never be that you're writing fiction to get away from yourself. You're writing fiction to get your audience away from themselves.
Wow.
True fiction is about establishing reality from a vantage point that you can't do in reality, so that you
Oh.
can plunge into it, to let yourself see yourself, to know how to be better in some way. And so the character Azazel is a character that is like what I envision myself and everyone to be, going through hardship, going through conflict.
Hmm.
He is the son of Lucifer and also the son of Metis, the wife
Wow.
of Zeus. He's conceived by deception. He's thrown out into the cosmos. He's gathered together by the daughters of another deity. He's taken and he's coddled, brought up. He then has to make a decision as his life goes on. Is he going to stay in the realm where he was born or go with his father? Or
Wow.
is he gonna conquer for his own sake and to do what he understands is within him to do for the existence of the universe? And
Wow.
that's what he does.
Wow. That's such a great description. I so much love the sound of your book. They sound very intriguing to me, and I particularly love your subject themes. They're very intriguing. I love it actually. And thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for sharing. Very intrusive. Now, I've always been fascinated about how authors, especially novelists, craft long sentences and brings works together in a way that it
Mm,
eventually makes a great book. Now,
yeah.
this leaves me thinking about how exactly they got the ideas and inspiration. Now, Linwood, I would also love to ask you this question. As far
Uh-oh.
as writing is concerned, how do you get your inspiration and ideas from?
The honest answer that I can say is feeling. It's each and every single one of us, we learn differently. Each and every single one of us, we treat things in our own individual way. But learning scientifically, you learn more when your emotions are there. When your
Absolutely.
when your emotions are tuned in, when your neurology can't fit with what you are hearing, and it's being processed in a way to stir feeling and to stir emotion. That's where I get my inspiration from. Um, I'm constantly, if you had to know me, if you know me in real life, and everybody around me is always saying, you're so calm, like nothing bothers you. And it's true, like I can care less about anything because
Mm,
the energy to give that, it's not necessary. But there are times when life places itself onto you, and there are times when You have to figure out how to maintain and to handle what you're going through. And it's in those times that instead of stressing or instead of thinking too much or instead of creating a narrative within my mind, that's when I turn to writing to dissipate the narrative within my mind
Mm.
and to get that narrative right and to make sure that that narrative isn't misleading me in any way. And if it is, I'm going to transform it into something creative that can inspire me to think and to
Wow.
do better. So it is all about, for me, my inspiration comes from feeling. My book of Faith That Works, I wrote that because I felt the people that were calling me and emailing me and pulling me aside when they heard me speak somewhere. I wrote Azazel because I was feeling lost, being an undergraduate student and feeling like an educated idiot or an educated dummy, not having any sort of not having any sort of real experience in the educational institution, and yet
Mm.
still just doing it, assuming that it's going to do something for me.
Wow.
I wrote A Fallen Record of Christian Transgression because I felt the need that the literature that is provided to us by Christian authors isn't doing enough justice to what I need as a personal individual.
Wow.
I need to understand the
Wow.
foundation of where these things come from. I need to understand the actual belief. And sure enough, the belief that is marketed in through propaganda concerning the Christian religion, it's not the same that is actually in the book. I needed to understand that. So I needed to feel and I needed to be felt by myself and also by the words I was taking in from within the Bible. And so this book, A Fallen Record, came about. Everything is not everything is about not getting caught up in feeling, but being able to reason with it so that
Wow.
you can manage that.
Well, I so much love your answers to this question. And it got me, nodding my head in recognition. I said, oh, yeah, that's true. And I love the fact that you mentioned feeling as being one of those prominent things that actually intrigue you and where you get your ideas. And it's because I too am an emotional writer and I
For
understand
sure.
the importance of feeling when it comes to writing.
For
Even
sure.
sometimes for some few days, and I've been trying to write on a particular theme for a contest. I was like, this particular team, I don't know. I can't get any idea because the emotion is not there. I need something to arouse me to be
That's
able to
it.
put something down. So I was like, okay, I'll keep thinking anyway if I get the emotion coming. So I understand the fact that you mentioned emotion. It's very important. And also
Yeah.
knowing that some of these your books are inspired by one or two things that happened to you in your life, in your feeling. It's really impressive. Thank you so much for sharing. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, apart from the books we've mentioned thus far, do you have any other works you've authored or maybe currently working on?
I do. It's real interesting. I'm working on, so I've been studying the philosophical context of the character Jesus, and the philosophical context differs from, for example, the book of Isaiah and the book of Luke. So I've just been analyzing how the Bible rationalizes these two characters, and so my
Mm.
next book that I've been working on, I have it 70% edited, but I always like to go back and do like three different edits. But yeah,
Wow.
the next book is just basically looking at how the individual figure mixed with what he taught, daily lifestyle, philosophical outlook, carrying himself, and looking at how the difference between how the Old Testament and then the New Testament depicts this person, and just making sense of the philosophy behind this character.
Wow. That's quite amazing to know. I love the sound of that. And I also love to ask you, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author
Oh,
like yourself? Are there any challenges you've encountered ever since you got
oh,
up?
yeah, good. Yeah, this is great, great. Yeah, because my first I was with a publisher. I had a publisher before this one, and they told me that they could not publish my work because it was too thorough. So it was a publisher that published
Wow.
philosophical content and also religious content. When they
Wow.
saw my book, they told me that because it was too thorough, and these are the actual words that they told me, nobody studies the Bible like this.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's
And it's
impressive. I'm intrigued.
so it's that nobody studies the Bible like this. What they were actually saying, what they ended up saying, how people can talk, but they were actually saying that the philosophical content would be too controversial for their publication.
Wow.
The
And I love
philosophical
such
con
kind of books.
Exactly. The philosophical content is the depth of it and the breadth of
Wow.
it. It's not something that would be accepted in theological circles.
Wow.
It was because of that they said this book, it's nobody studies the Bible like this, as if to say there would be no interest. Now,
Wow.
that's really crazy because I left them, ended
Wow.
up getting a new publisher, and ended up getting an audience full of bloody interest.
Wow.
And
Wow.
the the challenge there is when it comes to um, publishing, the challenge is you. You have to make sure that you are as authentic as possible. And sometimes that can be a conflict of interest because apart from being an author, I'll just say being an author, I've been publishing since 2017, and just this year I started my own publishing company. So being an author, you have a joy of publishing, you have a joy of writing,
Oh,
but you forget that you become a business. And then you forget that people see you as a business. So with that came with, I'm speaking of my own self personally,
yeah.
marketing managers, branding people, all of this and all of that, and all of this and all of that, to the point where I personally had to let them go because of the conflict of interest, my conscience for the type of mission that I had set out for my writing and for the image of me. That can get, a little bit mixed up and conflated when you get into the publishing realm and make things very difficult.
Mm.
So that's an you find all kind of things once you get into the publishing world. The challenges is not so much, you would think that it is putting together a manuscript and developing table of contents, and but when you have all of that's the fun part to me. Like that's the fun part. I really I have a lot of fun putting together my table of contents
Wow.
and making sure my manuscript is like full out. But the challenge is the business aspect of it and how it can weigh on your conscience, the things you have to sacrifice, the things you're not willing to sacrifice, and then the
Mm.
things that you have to.
Wow. Wow, I love the sound of that. And I particularly love the fact that love what your publisher told you for the very first time because it's to me, I kind of consider such kind of book very intriguing. And their
It
response
is.
actually shows that you did or you've done something very impressive. At least something that people can think and say, oh wow, this is too deep. This is overly philosophical. We don't think we can publish this kind of work in our company. Stuff like that. It shows that you've done a great job. And I'm very surprised to have had such kind of response of a book. That's very
No,
impressive. I'm a lover of
things are real.
philosophy. I love religion, ethics, and philosophy, stuff like that. So I understand such
Yeah,
kind of response from my point of view as a
yeah.
poet, even. So that's really an amazing response. I love it. That's impressive. Now, I also love to ask you, as a published author, what sort of advice do you have for other writers who are still struggling with publishing a book? How do you advise people in this category?
Don't rush. Um, I remember being such in a haste to publish because again, you have this idea of this is my calling
Yeah.
and I'm doing this and this is it and I'm gonna make a mark, and you think that it's gonna happen immediately, but nothing I've learned happens immediately
Wow.
because you're stepping into a world where you're not known. You're stepping into a world that doesn't have your essence. Your
Mm,
essence isn't in the publishing world. Your essence isn't in the literary field. Your essence isn't there yet. It takes time for your essence to be cultivated, just like it took
Absolutely.
time for your essence to be cultivated in this physical, natural world. Once you get
Mm,
into the world of any sort of publishing, that same sort of phenomenon of the developing essence, it has to take place and it will, just like in any field that we go into. So if whatever you are, if you may be struggling or even not, um, your content, it's really weird. In 2023, you would think that content matters, and I'm just gonna be like, it's really real out there when it comes to content in 2023. But you would think that content, in a sense, would mean something,
mm,
and it does, but it only means something to your audience. And that's the key to also remember is your audience is waiting for you. So the development of
absolutely.
your essence leads to your audience. Not everybody's going to like me. Not everybody's
Mm,
going to hear me and vibe. Not everybody's going to love me, but not everybody's going to hate me.
mm.
So
Wow.
it's finding the medium between desire and necessity.
Wow.
Finding the medium between desire and necessity, because your content can be what it is and whatever it should be. But in the end, you have to remember that whatever you're doing, it's being put out there into the public. And that public has your essence.
Mm,
Once you put that out there, you're filtering through to your specific essence. And no matter what you do, your essence will gravitate. It'll take time. Sometimes it may not. There will be seasons of time and immediateness, or however you want to, put that. But
yeah.
at the end of it is your audience. So if you're struggling, one thing I like to do is I like to write something and then I like to ask myself, did that really happen? Even though I wrote it. For
Mm,
example, in the Azazel book or in my book of poetry, um, or anything that I'm writing philosophically, when I'm writing, I like to ask myself, did that actually happen? Now, I know that this didn't happen. I know that this is not happening. But
yeah.
in the realm of where I am, and in the realm of where I want my audience to be when they're reading,
Mm,
did it actually happen? Like, did he say that? Did he
mm,
say that in that way? I like to just press myself on that because it's those little nuances that separate your work, and that, for example, would have somebody tell me when they purchase my book, it feels like I'm having a conversation with you.
wow.
And that's what I want. I want a conversation with you even though I'm not there.
Wow.
And that's one of the responses that I get. So, you know, writing, making sure that your work is on point for your audience. Number one, number two, just making sure that you're asking yourself the right questions to get the reality of what you're writing, whether it is fiction or not, settled and on point. And then number three, continuing, even though you may not have anything to write, just write.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Sure.
Just write. Whatever you pull together, you'll pull together a stream of thought that will equate to a flow that will give you what you need. And even if you don't get it in that moment,
Mm,
continue to write and continue to pull things together.
absolutely. Thank you so much for your advice. This is such an impressive one, and I'm hopeful that viewers, including myself, would love to utilize it. Now, Linwood, in case we have some viewers who are watching this interview and they would love to get a copy of your books, on what platform are they available on for purchase?
Wherever books are sold online, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, you can even my website, linwoodjacksonjr.com. You can go to my website, or you can just go to Google and type my name in. You can go to Google
Oh,
and type Linwood Jackson Jr. Everything on me will pop up, books and beyond, and you can reach my content through that way.
that's great. And I left a link in the description part of this interview where interested viewers can get a copy of Linwood Jackson's books directly on Amazon and on other medium platform. So thank you so much, Linwood, for accepting the invitation to be featured on P English Literature. It's very wholesome having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure as well.